Hey Luke, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing, Pip?
Yeah, well, not too bad. It's obviously strange days that we're all living in.
Yeah. Welcome to the first ever inThe podcast, episode 1, the pilot. Good time.
Great, isn't it? Good that we can be doing this.
Definitely, yeah. And so we're going to start by asking a couple of questions. Do you want to quickly go over for the audience what this podcast is about?
Yeah, well, I think we've been thinking a lot for a while, haven't we, Luke, in terms of under OneSmallBarkingDog, the media charity, where hopefully, in the summer later this year, we're launching this initiative called inThe, which will be basically a portal on the OSBD website for emerging young filmmakers, a place where they can create a profile, they can engage, they can network, they can share work, they can get access to resources, access to us. Hopefully over time it will be a commissioning base, it will be somewhere maybe even competitions and festivals flow out from. I thought that during this kind of really challenging time that everybody's facing, that one of the things we could do is at least start doing some video podcasts to try and give out hopefully some useful information to young filmmakers and to explore some things. So this is the first kind of test one, you and me having a bit of a conversation about how we both got into it and some things that hopefully could come out of that. And then in the next ones coming up, we're hopefully going to have some interesting guests and being able to tackle some useful issues and information that could be of great benefit to people. Yeah,
especially in this time in the world. This can be great just to have open conversations and have a bit of community based around all that's going on. Yeah. So my first question to you, Pip, being the man, the myth, the legend that started OSBD, is how did you get involved with filmmaking way back when?
Wow. Okay. So that goes back a long way. So I co-founded OSBD, but I guess for me, I was a youth worker. Really, that's my story. I was a youth worker in Birmingham, which is for those of you who are not from the UK, it's a big city in the centre. I was a youth worker there with my wife Debbie. We were working for a large church, doing a lot of work out in the community. And one of the things that started to evolve was to start to create media, which was instigated by a young person called John Miles, who years later now is a trustee of the charity. But then was a young person that just wanted to explore creativity, wanted to explore, can we start making things that would be useful for other young people? Back then, 1990s, it was it was analog. We were filming on begged and borrowed compact VHS equipped by crashing two VCRs together, and then and we just started to make these kind of little films. Some were kind of just quirky, funny things. Some were like box poppy type things, asking people questions about stuff. And I was out there as a youth worker speaking at sort of various conferences and stuff. And I'd take these little videos with me, and people would be like, "Where did you do that? Where did you get that?" Et cetera, et cetera. And it just kind of evolved and grew. And then over a few years, other people getting involved. People like Tim Dendy, Bob Taylor, who's the chair of it all, Rob Perbrick, lots of different people got involved in giving time. A local company that was a professional kind of video-based company, CVG, they gave us a lot of support, and it just evolved and grew. And then in 2001, it actually became a charity, and then became a really big part of my life. I discovered that I had a real, I guess, as a kind of a producer is a mixture of a kind of a salesperson and a project manager. And as a youth worker, you're definitely both those things in many ways. So it was a natural step for me. But also I love creating things. I'd come from a background of, I had been, an amateur theatre director of a young people's theatre group. I'd been involved with a friend making videos years before. And I guess I just really enjoyed it. And it just became kind of the direction of my life at that point, really.
Amazing. Yeah. Fantastic. And so what over the past 20 years have you learned from that whole process of going from like digital, not digital, going from analog to digital and just seeing the community change?
Well, I think for those who've never worked in an entirely analog world, it was a lot more technical challenges back then. Equipment was a lot more expensive unless you were using the very kind of lo-fi consumer stuff, which we were certainly to start with. I think digital has definitely democratized certainly the access to equipment, good equipment for people to make things. And now we live in a world where, I'm shooting lots of visual stuff that we're working on at the moment together. I'm shooting it on my 4K camera, my smartphone, which has a 4K camera, which is just insane. The technology now is definitely not the barrier. It's about content, it's about ideas. And even though those have always been the basis, I think, of whatever you're trying to do, is that your ideas are strong, your stories are strong, and all of those things, is that, back then, equipment was definitely more challenging. But it was exciting, and I think that's the thing I still really love about creating things, particularly working around young creatives, emerging, sort of talent and filmmakers. It's just this real passion to try and do something, make something, often in the background that there isn't a huge amount of money. And I think that's just really exciting. I think that's definitely for you and me, that's one of our real passions in OSBD, is to help other people to, not see it necessarily as a barrier that maybe they're struggling to break into the industry, or they haven't got a lot of experience, or they haven't got huge access to amazing like Hollywood kit, but actually you can do brilliant things with what's available to you. So I think for me it was that evolving sense over the years that things are possible if you work at it. That's never gone away. It's just that the technology has evolved and changed around that, the opportunities. And of course the opportunities now that you can, back in the day, we were, as a charity, we were like right at the forefront of stuff that was happening. We had a guy that was connected to us who was creating what would become MPEG 4. So we were heavily involved in a lot of the original kind of experimental stuff around sort of coding video and downloading. And of course, that's just exploded and changed the world now. So not only can you make things, but there are so many ways now that you can broadcast what you're doing. Of course, the challenge is still, as it always has been, and it's what I say constantly to people, the challenge is how you get your stuff out there, how you market what you're making, how you find an audience and develop that. And that's definitely something that we'll be exploring further on. But Luke, back at you had
turning it around on me.
What did you get involved? What, as a young person, what was going on inside you that you thought, actually, this is the direction that I want to go in?
So I started. My dad was a BBC editor, and so when he went through college and he worked for the BBC, worked at Channel 4. He then owned his own post-production house. And so just filmmaking and films and what they mean was very much around the household while I was growing up. And so I just, once at school, was just like, let's just make a film. You could so make a film. And then I threw my parents into the deep end to try and help their kid make this film. But then I just kind of caught the bug from it. And ever since then, I've been making really tiny little small videos. Like I have big hard drives of stuff that I shot 10 years ago of just random little bits and bobs. And so as I kind of grew up, I wanted to make bigger and bigger things. So I tried making bigger films, and then I tried making smaller films that I could do on my own. And it just became clear to me this is what I wanted to do, and that I had this wanting to tell stories, and that's the only way I could do it that worked with my head was to film it and to edit it together and to kind of combine it into this package that was filmmaking. And so, I just I caught the bug at a young age, being able to capture what was going on around me. And then I just haven't stopped since.
Obviously that was something that was brilliant that your parents, particularly your dad, were able to help you with that. Will have that opportunity. But as it became something that you knew that was the direction you wanted to go in, what kind of decisions were you having to make about what you were doing at school for your exam? What came after school for you? What the decision-making processes around that to kind of try and map out how you could actually develop yourself?
I think it was with filmmaking, it's a really odd me and you both know it's a very odd way to get into filmmaking, because there are seemingly endless ways that people get into it. Like you got in it through the youth work, and then I got in it through my dad. And then I know people who have done the whole, gone to university, studied, got masters, and gone through it in that way. I realized I wanted to do this when I was in year 9, and luckily, because I live in Birmingham, there's an incredible school here called the Birmingham Ormston Academy, which is a specialist arts school that you go for like year 10, 11. You go for your GCSEs and you go for your A levels there, and they give the same weights as a normal school would give English, maths, and science to the creative arts. And so I went along as part of the creative media course, and so I learnt filmmaking alongside my English, maths, science when I was doing my GCSEs. And I decided to move schools so I could have that, be in a place where I could learn more. And I'm really grateful for that time, because the 2 years when I did GCSEs, it was that I wanted to prioritize making films at the same level as I was prioritizing doing English, maths, and science. And I wanted to learn how to be creative just as much as I wanted to learn how to learn what cells are. And so I went there because that would be where the people most like me would be, because most schools have like a small filmmaking arm and a small filmmaking part, or it's normally tucked away in ICT. And I just wanted to go where the films were. And so I went there and I studied. I did my GCSEs there, and I did my kind of course there. And then I went on to A levels. And in that A levels time, they really encouraged us to just go out and start making films and start doing things. And being the stubborn filmmaker that I was, I just said, well, cool, I'm just going to go make things then. And so I did. And I took up opportunities. I made little short films in my spare times. I made big films in my spare time. And then along the way, I stumbled into helping my school do bigger and better things. So I actually helped in my last year of college to help revamp the live streaming system that they had at the school. And so I ran live streams for the music pathway and such. But then I went to I invested in my skills further, and I went to a BFI training week where I met you, Pip, as you remember. And from then I was like, well, I got to start contacting people. So I worked with Michael Clifford, the BAFTA winning director, who we might have on the show at some point. And then I contacted you, and then we ended up working together more and more. And so, and it came clear to me in this time, I wasn't very good. I'm not very academic because I've got dyslexia. I was never good at the paper side of things. And so the whole going to university and doing it that way was not very appealing to me. But what was appealing to me was apprenticeships and doing the apprenticeship routes. And that's when Pip stepped in here, and I became an apprentice to Blue Hippo Media. And I've been working on bigger and better things since, to the point where we are here now. And we've been working together for like almost 3 years now. And we've made feature films together. We've done small indies together. We've done commercials together. And it's just been a really good progression between making stuff in my bedroom to making stuff for the mass media and for feature films. And so that's my way of getting into it. But then I know people who have done crazy other things. So I've got lots of friends who've worked on Star Wars, and I've worked on Black Widow, and I've done the kind of supported training through mentorship groups, through education. And then I know people who invest in master's degrees and do it that way. Because there's so many different routes and so many different areas to it. So me and we both live in the independent sector where things are a lot smaller. But then I've got friends who want to be in TV. And so their way in is through the PA route of going, well, I'll go work as a PA for doctors, and that'll progress me into other BBC dramas and so on and so forth. And then I've got friends who want to go into movies. And so getting a PA job on Black Widow movie or Star Wars episode 9 was the way for them to go. And so it's really fascinating, the different ways people get into it. And that's just my way.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we'll definitely explore more, and definitely, with other people that we have to chat these video podcasts as well, because I think that's something that people often are like, I just don't know which is the right route for me. And so I think that's something we definitely will explore a lot more. But I think some of the key things to pull out of that with you was you took the opportunities, and I think that was really good. You stood out on that BFI film academy that I was part of running in Birmingham. and then you came back and you volunteered on it, and you helped out, and like you said, you came up for my other company, Blue Hippo Media, which is the one that's more commercial outside of the charity. Blue Hippo, for those that don't understand, kind of grew out of what we were doing with OSBD, the media charity, back in the 2000s, and became a sort of more of a commercial filmmaking company that went on to then make several feature-length films. That kind of is starting to kind of ease off now, and a lot more attention coming back actually to the charity, which is really exciting. But yeah, that gave me an opportunity, and I've been doing that with lots of young people across the years. But take up an apprenticeship, and then out of that, you've then gone fully freelance, and we've been able to give you, opportunities like working on the 2 feature documentaries as the main editor, which has been amazing for you at your age.
Yeah,
that role, really, really well. So I think we'll definitely explore lots more things around that. And I know that one of the things we're looking to do, aren't we, is to set up some live sort of podcasting sort of webinars where young people an opportunity to connect into us live and talk about what they're doing. And certainly in those sessions, I think they can chat more about where they're at and what they want to do, and maybe what the opportunities might be for them at that point. But like you say, there's so many different routes and ways depending on what you want to be doing, really.
Yeah.
That's great. So what were the kind of, you obviously talked about you had a chance to go to a specialist college, which obviously was really helpful. But as even now that you're a freelancer now, you're still doing stuff with me, you're doing stuff with the charity, you're doing stuff with people. What are the barriers, do you think, for young filmmakers to create a career or lifestyle out of what you're doing?
That's a good question. There are lots of barriers, I think, and so the young people I see working in filmmaking still are the ones who can basically take a punch and take the days that don't work and the jobs that don't work or the missteps and such, and just get back up. It's always everyone I know who's under the age of 25 and working in filmmaking are the kindest people possible, because you kind of have to be, otherwise you don't get hired back. It's I think it's just because there's so many people who want to be in the creative media, and so many people who want to work creatively, and there are lots of jobs going around, but everyone wants to be the big director role, everyone wants to be the big cinematographer or run the show. And so what really actually is helpful is learning how to be a cog in the machine, and learning how to do the job really, really well, and then being really kind about it as well. I remember working on a couple of short films, and my role was I was a second camera assistant on this film called Off Grid, and it was that whole, I had to do my job well so that Ash the first assistant camera operator could do his job well, and then the cinematographer could do his job well. And it was just, even if the days were really long, and there were really long days, and even if things weren't going as planned, if I could do my job well, then the film itself would be doing really well, and on top of that. And so it was that whole, but there's a feeling when you're a PA that you know what's best, because you've done film school, you've got your ambitions and everything. And so it's just being a bit humble about it. And I think some of the challenges is that because it's oversaturated, you've got to find your way in, you've got to find your people you want to work with, and then just be insistent and going, hey, is there a job coming up, can I come join you? And not expecting things to fall into place straight away. Like I did a good year of either low pay or no pay kind of work through like smaller projects and slightly bigger projects before I was being paid consistently through the apprenticeship, but also through other work as well. And now I'm at the point where I need to really consider if I do free work or not, if I do free work, because I've got the skills to be able to go, actually, no, this is what I can bring to the table. And so once you get to the point where you can go, this is what I could bring to the table, is the point where you can start going, okay, now I can kind of going, I've got this idea, can we try this? What if we try this? And just see where things grow from there.
The real challenge then isn't, I mean, you talk about, you can kind of take it. The plan is, we come across this a lot, don't we, about it feels like, unless you've got parents supporting you, or you're living at home for free, or whatever the situation is, that you can kind of not necessarily have to earn a lot of money during those periods where you're trying to break through, or whatever it might be. That's kind of the challenging part of the indie sector, isn't it? Unless you've gone the kind of the academic route, and you've got good level of qualifications, and then maybe you've gone for just a job in a bigger organisation like the BBC or one of the big, etc. So the challenge.
I always have jokes that one of the best things you can do as a freelancer is date someone who's not a freelancer. That way, there's someone paying the rent each month, and just like to kind of get out of that loop. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And
what I say to a lot of young people though is that there is no shame, in, because I get a lot of young people come to me like they're desperate to be filmmakers, making films, doing their own thing, and often they feel there's a real kind of perception issue, that they feel like they're either a fraud or they're quite do that, and because they're working in McDonald's or wherever it might be, just to pay their rent, or to have some money in their life. And I think it's really important that it doesn't matter what you're doing to sustain yourself during those, trying to find those opportunities, as long as it's legal. But feel any sort of embarrassment about that, because the great artists of the world going back centuries, they all had to sustain themselves one way. And I think the challenge is, I guess, to have a strategy that if you're sustaining yourself by flipping burgers 5 days a week, how can you have a strategy to get to doing that 4 days a week, 2 days a week, and that the work that you're doing that's actually starting to earn some, what you really want to do, which is being involved in making films, whatever set in, starts to actually take over and become sustainable for you. But again, I think that's a lot more in these podcasts.
Yeah, well, hopefully we'll be able to get my friend. I've got a lovely friend called Eben, who is same age as me, and he just came back from working on the new Black Widow movie, the new Marvel Black Widow film, and he was on a locations department, so he was helping out with locations, managing the set, and really just being there for actors on the day and everything. But he worked as a waiter at Edgbaston Cricket Ground, on and off, while he was getting his footing, getting his car license ready to go. And now he's returned to Birmingham to train to become a stuntman, to get on the stunt register, after seeing what the incredible stunt work was going on on the Black Widow set. And he is an exceptional assistant director, from what he's been learning on sets and being helped around all these things. And he chose a flexible job to be able to do that. And so he is by far an incredible filmmaker who also takes a knee and knows, right, if he does this and this. And I think now he teaches yoga while training to be on the stunt register. It's something like 3 years worth of training before you're allowed on it. And so he is still a filmmaker, even though right now he's training to have the next role. And I think that's important too, is that there's not always going to be work coming through, and especially from different areas. So in the independent sector, you really do have to find a way to support yourself, but also there's no shame in wanting to go to BBC or ITV and work there, because they've also got some incredible gigs, incredible things going on. And so it's always incredible if you can get a job in a big company or work in a different way that lets you to pay the bills another way. And because there's no shame in it at all. It's, at the end of the day, you're still a filmmaker if you've made one film a year or 20.
Interesting you talk about Evan as well, because obviously I've been involved a bit with Evan. And he was adamant, in those early days, he wanted to be an AD, a first AD. That was the role that was done. But through having opportunities and going on things like some really big movies, it really wanted to do stunt work. So that's the thing I think is really interesting, is that when you're starting, you might have very strong ideas about what you want to do or how you see yourself. And for a lot of people, it's always, like the writer, director, or the cinematographer, or one of the really kind of major roles. But actually, as you get more and more exposed to the various things that go on within the world of filmmaking. It may be that you discover there's something you never really thought of that you really love and you're actually really good at, and that becomes. So I think that's another good kind of point that we'll explore further. But for you, Luke, you kind of ended up doing a lot of, your main thing, I suppose, now is editing. What was it about editing that kind of drew you?
Yeah. Well, I always wanted to be a director, Pip. I always wanted to be behind the camera, shouting action and all that. And when I was making short films, I would do that. But because there's no money, I would always just edit as well. And my dad, being an editor, he would teach me how to edit and drilled into me at a very early age how to edit properly and what the ways to do it are and such. And so when I started working more professionally, I could just go, well, I'm really good at this, so let me do this for you. And then people said, like, oh yeah, that's done a really, really good job. And so I kept getting praise and kept being asked back to edit different projects and different bits and bobs. And so it just dawned on me that I'm actually really, really good at this. And I prefer this even to being on set all the time, because it's really good being on set in that space. But then also there's so much control and there's so much creativity to happen behind the camera in an edit suite. And I think for my generation and my kind of way of living of this whole, we're very much a digital generation of being online and so it just works with my head being able to edit. And I get to imbue my creativity in the way I cut and direct, in loose terms, how the film looks on the screen. And then also I get to work with great directors like yourself and have that dialogue of how things work and such. I think it was just, in the last few films you've made, we've both had moments where we go like, oh, let's try this. Oh, this works really well. What if we do this? What if we do this? There's just so much fun. And so I chose the route I think would be fun. I also chose the route I know I can sell, and I know I used to pay the rent in the future. I'm really good at it, and I really enjoy doing it too. And so it's just, I wanted to pick something I was good at, and I wanted to pick something I could grow and develop further. And I'm very happy with what I've chosen now, because it's something I can see it sustaining me going forwards in my career. And so same thing of going, I wanted to do one thing, then I realized I was good and I really enjoyed doing another thing, and I want to stay at that cog. And also saying that I don't want to be that, I'm also content with not being the main editor, because I've done assistant editing for you in the past of other feature films. I've organized things in the past of other films, and so I can reach out my skills in other ways to those different companies. I can do this if you want for your film, or I can do this, and just see where that goes in the future. And so, Pip, we've talked a lot about young filmmaking, and we've talked a lot about my journey and the journeys of other young filmmakers. What would be your top tips for filmmakers, any young filmmakers who are watching this right now? What would you recommend they do to get started or to grow their talents?
Right. Well, I always say to people, I think if you start building your life, if making films is something that you really want to do, then make films. I remember some years back interviewing for a role that we had on a project at Blue Pip Media, and we were interviewing a number of young people, some who come out of university, some who hadn't, and I remember a certain person came to the interview, and I think it had been 2 years since she finished doing media at university, and I asked her, what films has she made? And she said, well, I haven't made any because I've not had an opportunity. It's really tough to get in the industry, and I've not been involved with anything. And I just looked at her, I went, like, just the interview's over. And it's like, we want to engage with people who've got a real passion for what they want to do. And if this is something you really, really, really want to do, there is no way you'd have spent the last 2 years doing nothing. And so that's my first biggest mantra is, yes, of course, there can be huge obstacles to earning a living through doing, but there are certainly not obstacles to getting involved in making films. So either whether you're doing that yourself on real lo-fi kit or not so lo-fi nowadays, with the have in your pocket, but you can be making stuff, you can be developing ideas, you can be working on other people's films, you can be networking. So I think making films, networking would be the second thing, making sure that you're plugged in wherever you live. You know, there will be something, there'll be some kind of group that identify themselves in some ways, people who are making films. Now, you might live way out rural, you might have to look at that to a nearest city or a large town or something, but you will, or online, you know, which is what we're going to be doing through In The Frame, you know, find communities where you can tap in, express about who you are, what you want to do, and be available to support and help other people. You know, and of course, absolutely don't get yourself in situations where you've, you know, been asked to go and work on a, you know, a film set for 3 months for absolutely no money. You've got to pay all your own expenses. Be wary, be wise of not getting abused. But particularly people making short films, just get involved, get to know people, get to try out different things, you know, just be making stuff, learning. So I think, making stuff, networking. And then I think the third thing that my top tip would be really is to believe in yourself. I was saying before, you know, you may feel like, oh, you know, you go into a room and there's all these people and they're doing this, that and the other, and you can feel really insecure and inadequate and, oh, well, I've not done that yet, and I didn't go and work on something like Black Widow like that guy did, you know, but those things will come, you know. Just believe in yourself, you know, believe in the dreams that you have. And I know we're living in a very difficult time at the moment where people are locked down and those opportunities aren't going to be there. But there's lots of potential online, you know, opportunities to connect in, to find people that you might in the future collaborate with, etc. But have that sense of belief in yourself and that sense of which it's, you know, just putting yourself out there. Because it's definitely those people that I think sort of get on. So those are my 3 top tips, really. You know,
amazing
stuff, making sure you're networking in, and actually believe in yourself.
I think the believing in yourself one is really important, just because it can be really disheartening when things don't go the way you planned it to. But you're still a filmmaker, and you're still worthy of being in that room and such. And because everyone's path is different, and everyone's path to getting to filmmaking is so varied and unique that just saying, oh, I'm done because I haven't done this is total lies. And so totally agree.
Well, that's been brilliant, Luke. I mean, I think hopefully this will be to people, and after the first kind of pilot test one, but there's going to be more stuff coming up in the near future, isn't there? Yeah,
there is. Thank you everyone for watching the first ever In The Frame podcast, number 1, the pilot. Be sure to like us on Facebook and Instagram for updates, and we'll be coming out with more visual poems and little short films and blog posts in the coming weeks to hopefully entertain you during this lockdown and beyond. And
also one of the other things that we wanted to do, it wasn't just to alert people, definitely connect with us on Facebook, where we'll putting most of the updates and stuff. We do have a website, which all of this information will come up at the end of the podcast anyway, but make sure you connect in so you're aware of the updates. But we also want to be profiling some young filmmakers over the next few months as well, and that's doing some kind of little interviews and just sharing their work and doing something, you know, sharing that on social media and stuff. So you get in touch if that interests you as well. But we'll see you again very soon.
See you next time. Bye-bye.